Emperor sent his unwanted daughter as a joke. She was exactly what the human mechanic wanted. In the heart of the Galactic Federation's central hub, where trade routes and diplomatic corridors twisted like a glowing web around a distant star, one human worked in a corner most dignitaries never saw. Tyler Grant, officially listed as a maintenance specialist, unofficially known as a miracle worker, stood in his cramped workshop on Star Station Meridian trying to wipe alien lubricant off his fingers. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. The repair bay sat in the lower maintenance decks, far from the gold-lined diplomatic halls and casinos where ambassadors and rich travelers pretended they weren't one bad treaty away from war. Outside his viewport, Tyler could see ships from dozens of species drifting in and out of the docking spines, their hulls painted in colors human designers would have called impossible. Meridian floated in the neutral zone between three major powers, the Zenturi Imperium, the Drayan Coalition, and the United Earth Alliance. The mood out there in the galaxy was tense, the kind of tension you felt in your teeth, even if no one said a word. Tyler was one of only 8 humans on a station holding over 20,000 non-terrestrial residents, which meant he was always at least a little out of place, like a loose bolt in an otherwise perfect machine. His workshop didn't look like much. Mismatched benches, open access panels, tools from half a dozen worlds, and parts stacked in carefully labeled crates. But in this cluttered little room, Tyler had repaired Drayan quantum stabilizers, Zenturi biocrystal regulators, and old Earth-made fusion coils that should have been decommissioned years ago. Just a mechanic, he always said when people try to praise him. But there was nothing just about Tyler Grant. Machines made sense to him. Human, Zenturi, Drayan, it didn't matter. He saw systems as patterns, harmonies and disharmonies, like someone who could hear music in a pile of parts. The workshop door slid open with a familiar hydraulic hiss. Tyler glanced over, expecting a frazzled dock worker or some merchant panicking about a broken cargo seal. Instead, the doorway filled with the towering shape of Ambassador Krell, a Zenturi diplomat whose scales shimmered in hues that humanity still didn't have names for. Right now, those iridescent scales were mostly deep purple, and Tyler had been around enough Zenturi to know that meant stress. Serious stress. Human Tyler, Krell said. His translator turned a stream of clicks, chimes, and whistles into calm, precise English. I require your assistance in a most urgent matter. Tyler put his tools down and wiped his hands on a rag that had seen better days. Ambassador Krell, didn't expect to see you down here. How can I help? The Zenturi inclined his head in a gesture that was halfway between a bow and a ripple. A flash of yellow flowed over his neck scales. Embarrassment. Zenturi of his rank did not usually wander into maintenance. The honor is mine, Krell replied. Your reputation travels faster than official channels. Even in the diplomatic wing, they speak of the human mechanica. Tyler lifted an eyebrow. Zenturi pride could strip paint off a bulkhead. For one of them to admit needing help meant things were worse than they looked. What's the problem? Tyler asked. Krell reached into his layered ceremonial robes and produced a small, beautiful object. About the size of Tyler's palm, it looked like a cross between polished mother-of-pearl and living light, every surface softly pulsing from within. This is a Zenturi Royal Communication Core, Krell said quietly. Even the translator lowered its volume. It maintains a direct, secure link to Emperor ZTH. Tyler took the device with instinctive care. The surface felt warm, as if it had a heartbeat. He turned it slowly, noting the nearly invisible seams between crystal layers and the faint shifting runes that fluttered across its surface when he touched it. Gorgeous craftsmanship, he murmured. So what went wrong? During my approach to the station, our shuttle passed through an unexpected radiation field, Krell explained. The device has ceased functioning. Without it, I cannot deliver the Emperor's daily report. He expects it within 6 standard hours. The purple along Krell's scales darkened toward crimson. Even without understanding Zenturi culture completely, Tyler had heard enough stories about Emperor ZTH's legendary temper to know this was bad news. I'll see what I can do, Tyler said. But if this thing is hard-locked, the contents are classified at the highest level, Krell interrupted. I cannot leave it unattended. That's fine, Tyler replied. You're welcome to stay. Just don't hover too close. Some of my tools are tuned to human bioelectric fields. For the next 2 hours, the only sounds in the workshop were the hum of diagnostic scanners, the soft tap of Tyler's tools, and the occasional anxious rustle of Krell's robes. Zenturi Royal Tech operated on principles humanity had barely started to guess at, but the deeper Tyler dug into the system, the more it began to feel familiar. The communicator's core was like a choir, multiple energy channels singing in perfect synchrony. The radiation field had knocked one of those voices out of alignment, and the resulting dissonance had rippled through the whole system. There you are, Tyler muttered finally, adjusting a fine harmonic array with a tool that looked suspiciously like a flathead screwdriver wrapped in alien materials. Connection matrix is drunk. He ran a final scan, reinforced the shielding around the damaged layer, and smoothed out the power distribution paths. Satisfied, he stepped back. Okay, he said, wiping sweat off his forehead. Let's see if you still remember how to talk to your Emperor. Krell moved closer, all 4 eyes locked on the device as Tyler activated it. A soft, cool blue glow blossomed from the center. Lines of intricate Zenturi script appeared in a floating hologram above it, shifting and reconfiguring with stable, bright clarity. By the 7 moons, Krell whispered. Gold flared across his scales, a vivid surge of wonder. Functionality restored. Signal stability increased by 32%. The primary link is cleaner than before. Tyler shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. I saw some inefficiencies in the distribution grid. The design was solid, just not tuned for that kind of interference. Simple fix. Krell stared at him, scales rippling with shifting blue and gold. Simple, the ambassador repeated. Human Tyler, Imperial technicians could not repair this device. They failed repeatedly, yet you adjusted in hours and improve it. He paused, then added in a strangely formal tone. The Emperor will be informed. That really isn't necessary, Tyler said quickly. I'm happy to help, but I'd rather not end up on any Imperial radar, thanks. The Emperor rewards excellence, Krell replied, and there was something ominous in the way his scales flickered. The radar, as you say, will find you regardless. He tucked the device back into his robes with exaggerated care, offered a deep bow, and swept out of the workshop, leaving Tyler staring at the closed door with a sinking feeling. The day the Emperor learns my name is the day my stress levels quadruple, Tyler muttered, turning back to the half-disassembled atmosphere processor waiting on his main bench. Unfortunately for him, that day came a lot sooner than he liked. 3 station days later, Tyler was elbow-deep in the guts of a failing atmospheric regulator when his wristcom pinged with an urgent call. He tapped it with the back of his wrist, leaving a smear of grease across the tiny screen. Grant here, he said. Director Lissa Chun's face appeared, compressed into a small square, and looking more worried than Tyler had ever seen her. She was one of the few other humans on the station, and normally, she radiated calm control. Report to Diplomatic Docking Bay 1, she said. Immediately. Full dress uniform. Tyler blinked. Director, I'm in the middle of. Drop everything. Her tone shifted from professional to human in a heartbeat. That's an order, Tyler. And good luck. The call cut before he could ask anything. Good luck was never a comforting phrase coming from your boss. He shut down the regulator safely, peeled off his work gloves, and jogged back to his tiny quarters. He rarely wore his formal United Earth Alliance maintenance uniform, but he kept it in good shape. You never knew when someone would decide they needed a human mascot for a photo op. 10 minutes later, boots polished as much as space dust would allow, Tyler stepped into the polished corridors of the diplomatic sector. The shift from scuffed maintenance decking to gleaming alloy floors and soft ambient lighting was like crossing into a different station entirely. Docking Bay 1 was crowded. Station officials from multiple species lined up in a formal reception arc, wearing their most ceremonial outfits. Tyler spotted Director Chun near the center. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe knot, and her expression was tight. She spotted him and immediately moved to intercept. "What did I do?" Tyler asked under his breath. "And is there any way to undo it before whoever this is walks through that door?" Emperor Th's personal royal vessel requested emergency docking clearance, Chun said quietly. "He's on board." Tyler's stomach dropped. "The Zenturi Emperor is here, on Meridian, and he asked for you," Chun added. "By name." "Ow!" Tyler demanded. "Why?" "Ambassador Krell filed a report," she answered. "Your work on the royal communicator got noticed." Her gaze sharpened. "Listen carefully, Tyler. Whether we like it or not, you are now, unofficially, representing the United Earth Alliance. Do not insult him. Do not panic. Do not die." "That last one is top of my list too," Tyler said weakly. A piercing, high-pitched whine echoed through the docking bay as a sleek Zenturi shuttle slid into position behind the force shield. Its hull glowed with the same shifting iridescence as Zenturi scales, patterns flowing like living color down its sides. It settled with absolute precision. The ramp extended. First came the Royal Guards. Their scales were pure obsidian, no hint of pattern or shimmer, signaling absolute authority. They formed two silent lines, creating a corridor of power. Only when they were in place did Emperor ZTH emerge. Tyler had seen Holos, but the real thing made the air feel thinner. The Emperor stood nearly 8 feet tall, moving with a lethal grace that ignored gravity. His crest of spines ran from his forehead down his neck and back, each spine edged in gold. His 4 eyes, each a slightly different shade of metallic gold, swept the gathered crowd with open disdain. "Where," the Emperor demanded, his translator barely keeping pace with the sharp rhythm of his true voice, "is the human called Tyler Grant?" Director Chun nudged Tyler so hard he almost stumbled. He stepped forward, pulse hammering, and bowed as he'd seen Zenturi dignitaries do on Holos. "I'm Tyler Grant, Your Imperial Majesty," he said, hoping his voice didn't crack. All 4 of the Emperor's eyes locked onto him. It felt like standing under a searchlight and a targeting laser at the same time. "You are the human who altered and improved my royal communicator," Emperor ZTH said slowly. "Yes, Your Majesty," Tyler replied. "I was honored to assist Ambassador Krell." The Emperor walked toward him, every footstep black-scaled authority. That spice-sharp scent that Zenturi gave off when their emotions ran high filled the air around Tyler. "For 300 cycles, Zenturi royal technology has remained unchallenged," the Emperor said. "No one has improved upon it. You did so in ours." He stopped just close enough that Tyler had to fight the urge to step back. The Emperor studied him openly, scales shifting in colors Tyler didn't recognize. "Explain," Emperor ZTH commanded. Tyler swallowed. "There was no technical manual for explaining. I just see patterns to an alien emperor." "I have a knack," Tyler said. "Some humans are born with certain talents. Mine is understanding machines. I look at a system, and I can see where energy is wasting, where frequencies clash, where flow is blocked. Your communicator was designed beautifully, but the radiation field knocked its harmonics out of balance. I just retuned it." "Knack." The Emperor said the word like it was something exotic. "The Zenturi do not believe in unearned skill. Knowledge is studied. Ability is trained. For humans, it's both," Tyler answered carefully. "We study, but some of us are born with extra instincts in certain areas. Music, art, or in my case, engineering. I can apply it to any tech, Earth, Zenturi, Drayan, because systems have patterns in common." A slow wave of contemplative blue flowed over the Emperor's scales. "This talent of yours," he asked, "extends to all technology?" "Anything mechanical or electronic I've seen so far," Tyler admitted. The Emperor was silent for several heavy seconds. "My royal dreadnought, Invictus, suffers from critical failures," ZTH said at last. "My engineers have failed to identify the cause. I have replaced my chief engineers 3 times. He didn't say what replace meant. He didn't have to. I will pay handsomely for your services, human Tyler," the Emperor continued. "You will accompany me to Zentris Prime and repair my flagship." There was nothing in his voice that suggested this was optional. Tyler looked at Director Chun. Her mouth was a tight line, but she gave the slightest nod. This was bigger than him now, bigger than Meridian, bigger than Earth. It would be my honor, Your Majesty, Tyler said, because no was not a survival option. When do you wish me to depart? Now, Emperor Zh said simply, bring whatever tools you require. You will have full access to Imperial facilities. He turned away, then paused and glanced back, scales flickering briefly to a sharp, dangerous crimson before smoothing into amusement. Success will bring you rewards beyond imagination, Human Tyler, he said. Failure. He let the word hang for a beat. Let us focus on success. The Emperor and his retinue moved back up the ramp, leaving Tyler standing in suddenly too quiet air. Director Chun stepped up beside him, fingers digging into his uniform sleeve. This is unprecedented, she whispered. No humans ever been invited to the Zenturi homeworld, much less into their military tech. This could reshape everything. Or get me vaporized, Tyler muttered. Also an option, Chun admitted. But either way, you're going. 2 hours later, Tyler sat in a richly appointed guest cabin aboard the Emperor's personal transport, a small duffel of personal items at his feet and his custom toolkit secured in the corner. Zenturi royal guards stood silently in the corridor outside. The journey to Zentris Prime would take 3 days at maximum warp. 3 days to wonder what he'd just agreed to and what waited for him at the heart of an empire that didn't really believe humans belonged at the grown-ups table. The first 2 days of the trip to Zentris Prime passed in a strange mix of boredom and awe. Tyler's quarters were luxurious by human standards. Soft-edged furniture grown from some kind of living crystal, ambient lighting that adjusted to his circadian rhythm, and more space than his entire cabin back on Meridian. But they were designed for Zenturi chassis, not human ones. The gravity was a notch heavier than Earth normal, enough to make his legs ache after pacing for too long. The air carried a faint metallic tang that no filter could fully remove. If not for the discreet environmental adapter tucked behind his ear, he would have spent most of the trip dizzy. On the third day, a Zenturi attendant appeared at his door. Their scales were in neutral, submissive gray, eyes lowered respectfully. Human Tyler, they said, translator gentle. The Emperor requests your presence on the observation deck. We are approaching Zentris Prime. Tyler straightened his uniform, grabbed his curiosity, and followed. The corridors of the Emperor's vessel were elegant and functional, a blend of smooth crystal and hard alloy, lit by softly glowing lines in the walls. Everything felt purposeful. No wasted lines. No random decorations. The observation deck was enormous. Its main wall a single transparent surface stretching from floor to high ceiling. Emperor Zh stood alone before it, framed by the stars. Come, Human Tyler, he said without turning. Behold the heart of the Imperium. Tyler stepped up beside him and forgot, for a moment, how to breathe. Zentris Prime floated below them, wrapped in shimmering clouds and oceans the color of deep amethyst. Land masses gleamed like molten metal, reflecting the light of its star. The entire planet seemed to shift and flow with the same iridescent quality as Zenturi scales, like the world itself was alive and turning under a slow, cosmic light. It's incredible, Tyler said honestly. It is home, Emperor Zth replied. 73 generations of my bloodline have ruled from that palace. He pointed with one clawed hand toward a mountain peak where a sprawling structure clung to the rock like a growing crystal forest. Even from orbit, the imperial palace was visible, vast, layered, and impossibly complex. And now, the Emperor said, you'll be the first of your species to stand within its halls. Tyler sensed something in that statement. A test. A warning. Maybe both. I'm grateful for the trust, Your Majesty, Tyler said carefully. I'll do everything I can to fix the Invictus. Yes, you will, the Emperor answered. His scales shifted in a slow pattern Tyler couldn't read. But first, tradition must be honored. There will be a ceremony formally recognizing your service to the imperial throne. Tyler did his best not to visibly flinch. Whatever the Imperium requires, Your Majesty. ZTH's crest rose briefly, a sign Tyler was starting to recognize as amusement. You will also meet members of the Imperial family. They are curious about humans. I'll, try to represent us well, Tyler said. We shall see, the Emperor replied, a faint hiss laugh escaping him that the translator didn't bother to interpret. The descent to Zentrus Prime was smoother than any atmospheric entry Tyler had ever experienced. Zenturi flight control was frighteningly precise. One moment they were in orbit. The next, the royal vessel swept over glittering cities and enormous crystal formations that speared up from the ground like frozen lightning. As they approached the palace, Tyler's brain tried and failed to categorize what he was seeing. The structure wasn't built in a way he understood buildings. It was grown. The palace is formed from living crystal, said Vizier Tark, a senior official who had joined him in the shuttle. Tark's scales carried complex patterns of rank and authority. It responds to the bioelectric signature of the imperial bloodline. It grows, adapts, and reshapes itself according to their will. Living architecture, Tyler murmured. You don't do anything halfway, do you? Halfway is for lesser species, Tark said, and though his translator stayed neutral, Tyler caught the flash of amused color along his neck. The palace courtyard could have swallowed Meridian's entire central hub. Soldiers, attendants, advisors, and nobles moved with choreographed precision. Tyler was escorted through massive doors that opened like parting sea glass, the crystal flowing aside and then re-solidifying behind him. Inside, the palace hummed. Literally, a faint, layered resonance vibrated through the walls and floor, a low harmonic thrumming at the edge of hearing that made Tyler's bones feel like tuning forks. Bio-crystal resonance, Tark explained when Tyler glanced at the walls. It syncs with the Emperor's life field. So the whole palace is literally tuned to him, Tyler said. Correct, Tark replied proudly. They walked through soaring corridors where light spilled from recessed veins in the walls, reflecting off Zenturi scales in dazzling patterns. Tyler caught stares from every direction, curiosity, suspicion, and in a few cases, open disdain. Finally, they arrived outside a pair of colossal doors guarded by elite warriors with those same absolute black scales Tyler had seen in the Royal Guards. The Imperial Throne Chamber, Tark announced. The Emperor awaits. Tyler took a breath, squared his shoulders, and went in. The throne chamber made every throne room in every movie he'd ever seen look like a budget set. Columns of living crystal spiraled up to a domed ceiling shimmering with captured light. Hanging orbs floated like captive stars overhead, bathing the chamber in a glow that made every scale and crystal facet gleam. At the far end, Emperor ZEH sat on a throne grown directly from the floor, the crystal flowing up around him like a living crown. Arrayed nearby stood high-ranking officers, advisors, and what Tyler guessed were members of the Imperial family. Their crests were elaborate, their attire more decorative, and their gazes sharper. Approach, human Tyler, the Emperor commanded. Tyler walked along the central path, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes tracking his every step. He stopped at the distance Tark had drilled into him and bowed. Zenturi of the Imperial Court, Emperor ZEH proclaimed, rising. This human mechanic has displayed rare ability, improving technologies considered beyond enhancement. He is here to address the critical malfunctions of the Royal Star Dreadnought Invictus. A wave of murmurs rippled through the court, scales flashing in quick, subtle color shifts. Surprise, skepticism, offense, fascination. Tonight we honor his service with the ceremony of imperial favor, the Emperor continued. Afterward, he will receive a token of our appreciation. The last line made a few scales flare with unmistakable amusement. Tyler's unease grew. The ceremony that followed was equal parts terrifying and confusing. Tyler was guided through a series of symbolic gestures. He accepted crystalline emblems, repeated phrases fed to him through a concealed translator channel, and drank a bitter, tingling liquid that made his tongue numb and the world's colors briefly intensify. Eventually, an ornate metal, part crystal, part living light, was attached to his dress uniform by the Emperor himself. And now, Emperor Zedh said, voice carrying clearly, we complete tradition with the gift of companionship. A side door opened. The chamber quieted. A Zenturi female walked in. Tyler noticed several things at once. She was slightly shorter than most of the Zenturi he'd seen, with a fuller, rounder figure that gave her silhouette different curves than the lean, blade-like builds around her. Her scales were an unusual teal, shifting to streaks of copper when the light caught them. And unlike most courtiers who carried themselves like weapons, she moved with measured, deliberate grace, shoulders squared, chin level, every step dignified but not showy. My daughter, Princess Atsera, the Emperor announced, scales shimmering with that same amused pattern Tyler was learning to associate with trouble. She will serve as your guide and companion during your stay on Zenturus Prime. Whispers washed across the chamber like soft rain. The princess bowed with flawless court formality. Tyler, remembering his brief coaching, bowed in return. When she lifted her head, he met her gaze and saw intelligence edged with weary awareness glowing in her golden eyes. It is an honor to serve as companion to one who has impressed the Emperor, she said. Her translator softened each word into something almost musical. The honor's mine, princess, Tyler replied. More flickers of amusement rolled through the court. Tyler didn't understand all the undertones, but he could feel them loud and clear. Princess Atsera will show you to your quarters and see that your needs are met, Emperor Zth said. Tomorrow, you will begin your work on the Invictus. The dismissal was clear. The audience, for now, was over. Tyler followed Princess Atsera out of the throne chamber, feeling the weight of every whisper at his back. Once they were in a quieter corridor, the princess's posture relaxed slightly. The formal, almost rigid elegance softened into something more natural. I must apologize for my father's humor, she said without preamble. He finds it entertaining to present me as a gift to visiting dignitaries. Tyler frowned. Entertaining how? I mean, is there something I'm missing here? There is something the entire court is very aware of, she said dryly. By Zenturi standards, I am considered undesirable. She searched for the word, then continued. My body is judged excessively robust, and my scaling pattern is atypical. Zenturi beauty standards are narrow. I fail to meet them. Tyler looked at her properly then. The curve of her form, the way the teal and copper played across her skin like soft auroras. The steady, clear light in her eyes. If it helps, he said, human standards are different. Where I come from, you'd be called curvy, and a lot of humans consider that very attractive. Her scales flickered with a brief burst of rose gold, a color he hadn't seen before. The translator tagged the sound she made as skeptical amusement. You are being kind, human Tyler, she said. I appreciate the effort, but it is not necessary. I have had my entire life to become familiar with my status. It's not kindness, Tyler replied. It's the truth. Different cultures, different aesthetics. You happen to line up pretty well with mine. She studied him for several seconds, head tilted. I will consider that perspective, she said finally. For now, your quarters are this way. She led him through the palace, pointing out landmarks and explaining certain customs as they walked. Tyler quickly realized she was not only intelligent, but also deeply educated in matters of culture and history. Here, she said at last, stopping before an ornate door. These rooms have been adjusted for human physiology as much as possible. Gravity, atmosphere, and sleep environment are tuned to Earth norm. The sanitary facilities have dual labeling. Tyler stepped inside and felt his shoulders relax slightly. The quarters were still very Zenturi, lots of crystal, curved surfaces, and layered lighting, but the bed looked human-compatible, and the temperature felt familiar. This is incredible, he said. Thank you. If you require adjustments, inform me, she replied. You will be transported to the orbital shipyard in the morning to see the Invictus. Tonight, there will be an imperial banquet held in your honor. Tyler tried not to visibly die inside. Of course there will. She turned to leave, then paused when he spoke again. Princess Atsera. She looked back, eyes curious. For what it's worth, Tyler said, I think your father's joke is going to backfire on him. I'm genuinely looking forward to spending time with you. That rose gold shimmer flowed along her scales again, quick and fleeting. You are a strange human, Tyler Grant, she said. I'm not yet sure if that is a liability or an advantage. And then she was gone, leaving him alone with his thoughts and a sense that his life had just shifted onto a completely different course. He spent the next few hours exploring his quarters, reviewing what fragmentary technical data he'd been given about the Invictus, and trying to get used to the subtle humming presence of the living crystal around him. By the time the chime sounded to announce Princess Atzura's return, he had rehearsed at least 6 different ways to make a fool of himself at an alien royal banquet. When the door opened, Tyler forgot every one of them for a moment. Atzura had changed into full formal attire. Her scales were highlighted with subtle crystalline adornments that made the teal and copper ripple like moving water when she walked. Flowing bands of living crystal circled her arms and crest, catching the light and amplifying the rose gold tones whenever her emotions spiked. You look, Tyler began, then decided honesty was still the best strategy. Beautiful. Her scales flashed rose gold so strongly that the nearby wall crystal responded with a faint shimmer. You were generous with your compliments, she said. Shall we go? Please, Tyler said, before I start trying to figure out which fork is for what. Zenturi do not use forks, she replied. You will have different things to worry about. Of course you don't, Tyler sighed. Lead on. The Imperial Banquet Hall was a masterpiece of controlled brilliance. Crystal walls pulsed with soft light in time, with a distant rhythm that might have been music or the palace itself resonating. Hundreds of Zenturi nobles in their most elaborate patterns filled the room, their scales turning the air into a living light show. Tyler was seated near the Emperor at the main table, with Princess Atzura at his side as his designated companion and translator. The position was an honor he would have happily traded for a quiet corner and a plate of safe, non-lethal food. The meal itself was a careful diplomatic balancing act. Most of the courses were Zenturi dishes scented with spices Tyler's brain couldn't parse. A side table held human-adapted food synthesized to mimic familiar flavors. He stuck mostly to those, occasionally accepting tiny portions of Zenturi cuisine after Atzura confirmed they wouldn't melt his insides. Throughout the banquet, the Emperor made a point of introducing Tyler to key figures. Admirals, scientists, noble houses whose fortunes rose and fell, depending on which way TH's scales flashed. Is it accurate, asked Admiral Zentrak, a battle-scarred officer with gunmetal scales, that some human colonies still use combustion engines and fossil fuels? On newer, resource-limited colonies, yes, Tyler said. Not everywhere has access to fusion or antimatter yet. Primitive, Zentrak commented, though without open insult. Yet your species has expanded to over 30 systems in less than a century. There is efficiency in such adaptability. Humans are good at making do, Tyler said. We improvise. Sometimes recklessly, Atzura added smoothly, but often effectively. Tyler glanced at her, surprised. You've been studying us, he said. Alien cultures interest me, she replied, particularly those who thrive despite limitations. My daughter has an unhealthy fascination with non-Zenturi, Emperor VH said from his place of honor, scales flickering with amused disapproval. It may help explain her unconventional form. Polite laughter rolled through the nobles nearby. Tyler felt a spike of anger at how casually he said it. But Atzura's expression remained perfectly composed, her scales a dignified teal. I believe understanding our neighbors strengthens the Imperium, she replied calmly. Knowledge of allies and adversaries is a form of power, Father. Knowledge is only useful when it serves imperial strength, the Emperor countered. He turned back to Tyler, eyes bright with renewed interest. Human Tyler, he said, based on the limited reports you have seen, what is your theory regarding the Invictus failures? Put on the spot, Tyler straightened slightly. Without direct access, I can only speculate, Your Majesty, he said. But based on what I've read, I suspect you're dealing with integration conflicts between technologies from different species. The table quieted. Admiral Zintrak leaned in. We have considered integration issues, the Admiral said. Our diagnostics show no interface errors. Diagnostics can only detect what they're programmed to recognize, Tyler replied. The Invictus incorporates systems from at least 4 conquered civilizations. Each tech line carries its own rhythm, its own energy signatures and harmonics. On their own, they work, but when you combine them, they can create new failure patterns your systems don't know how to flag yet. A thoughtful hush settled over the nearby tables. Fresh perspective, Emperor's TH said, sounding pleased. This is why you are here. Tomorrow, you will see the Invictus in person. We will test your theory. He raised a ceremonial cup. To successful repairs, he proclaimed, and an Invictus that lives up to its name. The hall echoed with Zenturi voices repeating the toast. As the evening wore on, Tyler found his attention drifting more and more toward the princess beside him. For all the subtle mockery she endured, she carried herself with unshakable grace. When they spoke in low tones between conversations, her insights into Zenturi politics, history, and even human behavior impressed him. You seem uncomfortable with all this, she said quietly at one point, watching him over the rim of her glass. Is it that obvious? Tyler asked. I'm a mechanic, not a politician. I'd rather be up to my elbows in drive conduits than trying not to insult 100 nobles accidentally. Yet you perform adequately, she said. The warm teal in her scales told him she was amused. Better than some professional emissaries I've observed, if I am honest. Flattery will get you everywhere, princess, Tyler said. But I still miss my workshop. Do you miss Meridian? She asked. Your home. Parts of it, he admitted. The routine. The freedom to focus on fixing things without entire empires watching. Nothing here feels simple. No, she said softly. It does not. There was something in her tone that made him glance at her more closely. But before he could respond, the Emperor rose, signaling the banquet's end. As the crowd began to shift and bow, Emperor's TH approached their side of the table. Rest, human Tyler, he said. Tomorrow you face the Invictus. My daughter will continue to serve as your companion and translator. Try not to bore him with your endless questions about human habits, Atsera. Yes, father, she replied, head inclined in formal deference that somehow still carried a thread of quiet rebellion. As they left the hall together, Tyler spoke in a low voice. Not everyone is thrilled I'm here, are they? He asked. You are the first human to stand in this palace, Atsera replied. Some conservatives view that as an insult to tradition. Others fear what it will mean if you succeed where our engineers have failed. And you? Tyler asked. Her scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. I think change is inevitable, she said at last. For any empire, even ours. Your species seems to understand adaptation better than most. Perhaps we can learn from that. They reached his quarters. Tyler turned to her. Thank you, he said, for getting me through tonight without starting a war. The rose-gold hue brushed her scales again, softer this time. You are more adaptable than you believe, Tyler Grant, she replied. I will collect you in the morning. And with that, she glided away, leaving him alone with his racing thoughts, the hum of living crystal, and the feeling that tomorrow would change more than just the fate of a single warship. The next morning, the palace woke Tyler with a soft chiming tone that resonated through the crystal walls. He rolled out of bed, grateful to trade ceremonial fabric for the comfort of his work uniform. Today was about engineering, not etiquette, and for the first time since arriving on Zentris Prime, that thought actually calmed him. He checked his toolkit twice, making sure everything from his jury-rigged resonant analyzer to his favorite manual driver was in place. When the door chimed, he already had the strap slung over his shoulder. Princess Atsera stood outside in what looked like the Zenturi equivalent of a practical field outfit. The living crystal bands at her arms were smaller, and her attire hugged her fuller frame in a way that prioritized movement over spectacle while still flowing with elegant lines. Her scales showed a steady, balanced teal with faint copper accents along her crest. You look more like someone headed to work and less like someone about to be gifted to a visiting dignitary, Tyler said before he could stop himself. Her scales flashed rose gold in a quick pulse. That is the intention. Are you prepared? As I'll ever be, he said. Let's go meet your giant problem warship. The route from the palace to the spaceport took them through the capital's upper levels. From the transport's windows, Tyler watched Zenturi cities unfold. A mix of towering crystal spires, suspended platforms, and flowing walkways that seemed to ignore ordinary structural rules. Massive transit streams wove between them like glowing threads. Your people really don't believe in straight lines, do they? Tyler asked, eyeing a spiraling transport tower. Straight lines are brittle, Atsara replied. Curves distribute stress and respond better to change. Our architecture reflects our philosophy. Humans build a lot of boxes, Tyler admitted. Probably says something about us, too. At the spaceport, they boarded a sleek shuttle with a high-priority clearance code. During ascent, Atsara called up a hollow projection of the Invictus and its technical specs. The ship's ghostly outline appeared in the center aisle, rotating slowly. Tyler's eyes widened. That's not a ship. That's a flying continent with engines. Royal dreadnoughts are symbols as much as weapons, Atsara said. The Invictus represents the Imperium's power to our enemies. He studied the layered schematics. Multiple power cores, primary Zenturi drive, secondary and tertiary systems of Drayan, Valkan, and another design he didn't recognize at first glance. Weapons arrays interlaced like overlapping nerves. Whoever designed this thought more is more, Tyler said softly. This is a masterpiece of overkill. The Emperor wanted the finest technologies from all conquered civilizations united in one vessel, she replied. In theory, it should be unmatched. In theory, Tyler echoed. Reality has opinions, though. The shuttle banked, and through the viewport, the Invictus came into view. Even Tyler, who had seen his share of big ships, forgot all his practiced composure. The dreadnought stretched nearly 2 kilometers long, its hull gleaming with layered crystal and alloy. Organic curves flowed into sharp angles where weapons and sensor arrays jutted out, giving the whole structure a predatory grace. It looked like something grown to hunt stars. She's beautiful, he said quietly. You find war machines beautiful? Atsara asked, curious. I find well-designed systems beautiful, he answered. Purposeful lines. Harmonized flow. This is art and engineering welded together. I don't have to like what it's built to do to appreciate how it's built. Her scales warmed to that light teal of amusement. You continue to surprise me, human mechanic. They docked with an aft port, and a team awaited them when the airlock cycled open. At their head stood Chief Engineer Krall, a Zenturi with bronze-toned scales and a crest scarred from either battle or improper lab safety. Tyler couldn't tell which. Human Tyler, Krall said, offering a bow more to Atsara than to him. Welcome aboard the Royal Star Dreadnought Invictus. We have been instructed to provide full access to all engineering systems. Appreciated, Tyler replied. I'd like to start with the main control center and then see the physical drive interfaces. As you wish, Krall said. He glanced at Atsara. Will you be accompanying the human princess? Yes, she replied. My father assigned me as companion and translator for the duration of the project. A brief, silent exchange flashed between their scales. Rank, obligation, something close to pity, but Krall bowed more deeply. Then we are honored by your presence. The main engineering center was a cathedral of data. Transparent displays floated in layered rings, each representing a different subsystem. Energy flows, shield feedback, life support metrics, weapon charge cycles, navigation corrections, all of it wrapped around a central core like a holographic storm. We are operating at 30% of design power, Krall explained as they walked. At this level, all systems remain stable. When we attempt to exceed 70%, failures cascade. Drives destabilize, weapons glitch, life support begins to cycle at unsafe frequencies. Your diagnostics? Tyler asked, setting his toolkit down beside the main console. Show nothing conclusive, Krall said tightly. We have replaced core components, rewired interface nodes, recalibrated field regulators. The problem remains. Tyler stepped up to the controls, hands ghosting over them. The interface was in Centauri script, but his translator projected subtle overlays, and the underlying logic was still systems and signals. "May I?" he asked. "By imperial order, yes," Krall said, though he looked as if someone had suggested rewriting sacred scripture. Tyler began diving into layer after layer of system maps. The more he looked, the more his earlier theory solidified. The Centauri systems were robust, built to withstand abuse. The Drayan components were elegant but fragile, tuned for precision. The Valkan tech, all hard edges and triple redundancies, resisted compromise in a way that made integration tricky. It was like listening to 4 different orchestras trying to play 4 different symphonies with the same conductor. At low volumes, you heard mostly one. At higher volume, chaos. He traced power rails, examining how energy moved when the system was at rest versus how it was supposed to move under load. "Can you simulate a slow increase to 70%? Tyler asked. "I want to watch the harmonics as they rise." Krall hesitated, then nodded. "Engineers, prepare for simulated load increase. No live weapon charge. Monitor all junction harmonics." As the simulated power curve began to rise, Tyler layered his own diagnostics on top of theirs. His custom analyzer mapped frequency interactions in colors and waves, something his brain could read like music. "There," he murmured as the system approached 70%. "Stop." A faint interference pattern shimmered across one section of the holo display. It was small, subtle, easy to miss unless you were listening for the wrong notes. "What do you see?" Otsera asked, stepping closer. "Harmonic drift between the Drayan quantum matrix and your primary Centauri power grid," Tyler said. "At low levels, it cancels itself out. But the higher the load, the more those frequencies amplify each other. By the time you hit 70%, you're on the edge of a runaway feedback loop. Push harder, and everything connected starts to scream." Krall moved in, his own scanners blinking as he focused on the highlighted region. "Our diagnostics flagged nothing here," he said quietly. "Because your diagnostics are built to look for known Centauri faults," Tyler replied. "This isn't one of them. You grafted Drayan tech into your framework and assumed your tools could still see everything." A muted flush of blue spread over Krall's scales, reluctant acknowledgement. "Can you fix it?" "I think so," Tyler said. "I don't want to just patch it, though. I want to pull the power down completely, map the raw harmonics, then design a buffer that dampens the conflict before it starts. A full shutdown will take hours to restart," Krall said sharply. "We would be fully vulnerable." "If I'm wrong, you lose time," Tyler said. "If I'm right, you gain a functioning flagship. Seems like a good trade." Krall's scales darkened. "I do not have authority for such a risk." "I do," Otsera said. Both of them turned toward her. Her scales had shifted to a deep, resolute teal. "As Imperial Princess, I authorize full shutdown of the Invictus for diagnostic purposes," she said. "If there are consequences, I will answer for them." Tyler saw Krall flinch at the implication. But protocol was protocol. "So ordered," the chief engineer said. "Begin controlled shutdown. Transition to emergency life support." One by one, the displays dimmed as the ship powered down. The deep hum beneath Tyler's feet faded, replaced by a quiet that felt unnaturally loud. "You're sure about this?" he murmured to Otsera. "If you are correct, it will be worth any anger my father expresses," she replied. "If you're not, then I will endure that anger, so others do not." Her matter-of-fact acceptance of that weight lodged under his ribs. With the ship quiet, Tyler got to work. He placed resonance sensors at critical junctions, linked his analyzer into their diagnostic grid, and ran low-level pulses through the dormant pathways to see how different tech stacks responded. Hours blurred. The Centauri engineers, initially skeptical, began following his instructions simply because his logic made sense in real time. Otsera stayed at his side, translating nuanced concepts, smoothing cultural friction, and occasionally asking pointed questions that sharpened his own thinking. Finally, Tyler saw what he needed. The interference pattern at 70% started as a slight phase mismatch and grew because nothing dampened it early. "I've got it," he said, calling up a design schematic. "We don't need to rebuild. We need a buffer, a harmonic dampener sitting between the Drayan matrix and your primary grid. It catches the mismatch and bleeds it off harmlessly before it cascades." The diagram glowed in the air. Layered resonance filters, adaptive modulation loops, and a control core modeled loosely on the tweaks he'd made to the Emperor's communicator. "This is similar to your modifications to the royal device," Atsera observed. "Same physics, bigger stage," Tyler said. "Machines are machines. They don't care who built them." Krall studied the design like someone reading heresy that also happened to make sense. "If this works, it will alter the entire integration doctrine of the Imperial fleet," he said. "We have assumed dominance of Zenturi frameworks." "Dominance doesn't always equal harmony," Tyler replied. "Sometimes systems work better when none of them are allowed to shout over the others." The chief engineer's scales flushed a shade of thoughtful blue. "Very well. We will implement your buffer." The next stretch of time was a blur of action. Zenturi engineers assembled buffer components with frightening efficiency. Tyler calibrated the resonant cores himself, adjusting until the readings matched the pattern he'd built in his head. Atsera moved through engineering like a quiet command signal, lending the weight of her royal status whenever resistance flared. At last, the buffer was installed and linked. "Begin startup," Krall ordered. "Monitor harmonics at all junctions." Power returned in waves. 30%, 40, 50, 60. The dreadnought's systems rumbled back to life around them, displays lighting in expanding rings. 70%, a technician reported. "All systems stable. No abnormal harmonics detected." "Continue," Krall said, voice tight. 80%, 90, 100% power. "All systems functioning within optimal parameters." Efficiency is 12% above design projections. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then voices erupted, scales flashing in wild colors of excitement and disbelief. Chief Engineer Krall turned to Tyler, his bronze scales glowing gold with open admiration. "Human Tyler," he said formally, "the Royal Engineering Corps acknowledges your extraordinary skill. The Invictus is truly unconquered now because of you." Tyler exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Took all of us," he said. "Your crew built and installed a masterpiece. I just retuned the orchestra." Before Krall could reply, the central display lit with an incoming priority channel. Emperor ZTH appeared, towering even in holographic form, scales bright with intensity. "Report," he commanded. Krall bowed, so low his crest almost touched the floor. "Your Majesty, the Invictus is fully operational at 100% power. All systems stable and exceeding previous benchmarks. The human's buffer design resolved the critical failures." The Emperor's gaze swung to Tyler. "Human Tyler," he said, "you have succeeded where my finest failed. The Imperium remembers those who serve it well." Tyler bowed. "Your ship is a marvel, Your Majesty. It was an honor to work on it." "Return to the palace," the Emperor said. "Tonight, we celebrate your achievement. Then we will speak of your reward." The connection cut. The engineering team surged forward to inspect the buffer, peppering Tyler with questions. Through it all, Atsera stayed close, her scales shimmering with that rose-gold hue that meant emotions she didn't easily name. "You've made quite the impression," she said quietly. "Does this mean I've finally earned the right to ask you annoying cultural questions in return?" he asked. Her scales brightened with amusement. "I suppose that would be equitable." On the shuttle back to the surface, the mood was much lighter than it had been on the ascent. Tyler felt that unique mechanics high, the buzz that came from taking something broken and making it not only work, but work better. At the palace, preparations for a celebration were already underway. Tyler barely had time to clean up and switch back in a formal uniform before attendants whisked him toward a grand hall transformed with new patterns of light and crystal. The evening blurred into speeches, ceremonial acknowledgments, and an uncomfortable amount of praise directed his way. Nobles who had sneered out in the night before now leaned in with forced smiles, asking detailed questions about human engineering, Galactic Federation politics, and what it was like to be a human mechanic who just saved an alien empire's prestige. Through every conversation, Atsera remained beside him, a steady presence guiding him around delicate topics. When someone's curiosity drifted into dangerously classified territory, she steered the question away with a subtle line. "Your father seems very pleased," Tyler murmured to her during a brief lull. "The Invictus represents more than firepower," she replied. "Its failure embarrassed him. Its restoration strengthens his rule and quiets his critics. Tonight, your existence is very convenient for him." "Good to know I'm at least convenient," he said dryly. A shout at the far end of the hall signaled the Emperor's approach with several high-ranking officers. ZTH's scales gleamed with open satisfaction. Admiral Zentrak, Gunmetal, and Severe walked at his side. "Human Tyler," the Emperor said, voice booming just enough to capture attention without feeling like a shout. "Admiral Zentrak's fleet trials confirm that the Invictus now surpasses all expectations. Your modifications improved efficiency as well as stability. I'm glad the system performed under real conditions," Tyler said. The Emperor's gaze gleamed. "Now, we must discuss your reward." He turned his golden eyes briefly to his daughter, who stood beside Tyler with composed dignity. "You have spent much time with Princess Atsera," he said. "I observe that you find her company agreeable." Tyler glanced at Atsera, whose scales had gone very still, like someone bracing against a wave. "Princess Atsera has been an incredible guide," Tyler said carefully. "Her insight and patience have been invaluable." "Excellent," Emperor ZDH said, scales rippling with amusement that made Tyler's stomach twist. "Then perhaps you will accept her as part of your reward." The words dropped into the hall like a solid object. Conversations nearby faltered. Tyler stared for a heartbeat, then looked at Atsera. Her scales had shifted to a tightly controlled teal, every trace of rose gold gone. "Father," she said, voice calm but taut, "perhaps this matter would be more appropriate for private discussion." "Nonsense," the Emperor said with a dismissive wave. "You have earned the right to be claimed by someone worthy, daughter. Human Tyler has rendered exceptional service. If he desires a Zenturi bride, an unconventional one, yes, but royal nonetheless, who are we to deny him?" Tyler felt anger tighten in his chest, not just at the way ZTH spoke of her, but at how the court reacted. Murmurs, flickers of amused color, a spectacle made from her body and status. "Your Majesty," Tyler said, forcing his voice to stay even, "I am deeply honored by your generosity. But where I come from, such a commitment is not a prize someone simply accepts. Marriage, union, is a choice made by both people." A hush fell over those within earshot. "You suggest my daughter's preference is relevant to this matter?" Emperor ZTH asked slowly. "In human culture, yes," Tyler replied. "I could never accept such an honor unless I knew Princess Atsera genuinely wanted it." The Emperor turned his gaze on his daughter. "Atsera, you have spent time with this human. Would such an arrangement displease you?" For a long moment, she was silent. Then her scales shifted slowly, that familiar rose gold blooming along her cheeks and crest. "Father," she said, voice softer now, "I have found Tyler Grant to be intelligent, respectful, and unexpectedly insightful. His company does not displease me." The Emperor's scales rippled with laughter. "So diplomatic. But that is not what I asked. Would a more permanent bond be a burden?" Atsera lifted her head. "No," she said. "It would not be a burden." Tyler felt his heart skip. She met his eyes briefly, and in that quick flash of connection, he saw more than duty. "Excellent," Emperor ZTH declared. "Then it is settled. Human Tyler has earned a royal bride through his service to the Imperium." "Your Majesty," Tyler said quickly, "with respect, humans have something we call courtship, a time for two people to truly know each other before deciding on a lifelong commitment." The Emperor tilted his head. "Explain this courtship." "A period of exploration," Tyler said, "learning one another's values, hopes, limits. It ensures that a union is not just useful, but sustainable." especially for two people from radically different worlds. The Emperor's scales shifted to contemplative blue. A trial period. In simple terms, Tyler agreed. Very well, the Emperor said. You will remain on Zintrus Prime for 1 standard month. During this time, you will pursue this courtship with my daughter. At the end, if both of you choose the union, it will be formalized. If not, we will renegotiate your reward. A faint murmur washed through the hall. Atsura's scales shimmered rose gold again, warmer this time. A month, the Emperor concluded, to decide the future of 2 lives, and perhaps 2 civilizations. He moved away to speak with other guests, leaving Tyler and Atsura standing in the wake of what he'd just set in motion. I'm sorry, Tyler said quietly once they had a sliver of relative privacy. You shouldn't have been put on display like that. You did not cause that, she replied. My father enjoys his games, but his games sometimes break patterns that need breaking. Do you regret agreeing? He asked. Her scales softened into a gentle rose gold. Ask me again in a month, human Tyler, she said. After your people's strange courtship has had a chance. Deal, he said. The Crystal Gardens are open after celebrations, she added, almost shyly. They are quiet. Few courtiers venture there. If you are not overwhelmed by alien politics, perhaps you would like to see them. I'd like that, Tyler said. A lot. And for the first time since stepping feet first into an alien empire's orbit, he felt that what was happening to him was not just a series of diplomatic events, but the beginning of something that belonged to him, too. The Crystal Gardens lay hidden deep within the palace grounds, separated from the formal courtyards and public displays by layers of subtle security and tradition. After the celebration, when most of the court drifted toward private intrigues and whispered strategy, Atsura guided Tyler down faintly glowing paths that wound away from the noise. Here, the living crystal grew freer. Columns and spires erupted in natural patterns rather than symmetrical designs, forming arches and clusters that caught the light of Zintrus Prime's 3 moons in dazzling prismatic halos. Soft, bioluminescent moss grew in pockets along the ground, turning the pathways into gentle rivers of color. This place is incredible, Tyler said softly. It's like walking inside a geode under a night sky. The gardens are cultivated by the imperial family, Atsura said. Each emperor or empress adds new growth patterns. My grandmother favored spirals and nested helixes. My mother preferred branching structures. They reached a small, open area where a crystal formation curved into a natural bench. Across from it, a sweeping fan of translucent crystal panels caught moonlight and fractured it into a slow-moving tapestry that painted the air. This was my mother's section, Atsura added. She spent many nights here. Tyler sat, careful not to scuff anything with his boots. You come here often? Not as often as I did as a child, she said, settling beside him. When court whispers became too loud, I would hide here, among things that were allowed to grow differently without being judged as wrong. He glanced at her, noticing the way her gaze lingered on the asymmetrical formations. Not subtle, your metaphors, he said gently. Sometimes subtlety is wasted on crystal, she replied. They sat in comfortable quiet for a moment, watching the shifting light. Tyler felt the exhaustion from a day of high-stakes engineering and royal politics catch up with him, but beneath it was something else, a cautious warmth growing every time Atsura spoke, every time her scales flickered rose gold in response to his words. Can I ask you something personal? He said finally. You may ask, she said. I reserve the right not to answer. Back in the hall, he said, when your father made that announcement. You said the idea of a union with me wouldn't displease you. Was that about me? Or was it just better than whatever other options he's thrown at you? Her scales shifted into complex patterns as she considered. Most of the matches suggested for me are political, she said at last. Alliance building, faction balancing. My appearance makes me a less valuable piece on the board. So my prospects tend to be those willing to accept a flawed royal for a strategic advantage. They see a tool, not a person. I'm not thrilled about that description, Tyler muttered. Neither am I, she said. With you, things are different. You did not arrive seeking power or status. You came because a machine needed repair. A very big machine, he said. Yes, she agreed, amusement brightening her teal, but still a machine. You looked at me and did not immediately see a joke, or an insult, or a bargaining chip. I saw someone intelligent enough to understand my ridiculous tech metaphors, Tyler said, and someone who sacrifices without complaining way more than she should have to. That deep rose gold color flooded her scales again, stronger now, spreading along her crest in a way he was starting to love. So yes, she said softly, my answer was about you, not just the absence of worse alternatives. He felt something loosen inside his chest. Good to know. And you, human mechanic? She asked. You protested my father's declaration. Are you merely protecting your customs? Or does the idea of being tied to an alien princess truly unsettle you? Honestly, he said, it's terrifying. Not because you're Zenturi, but because big commitments always are. And because getting married for politics instead of love is something humans did for centuries, and it never ended well. And now, he looked at her, at the way the crystal light reflected in her gold eyes, at the way her full form sat with quiet strength instead of trying to shrink. Now I'm curious, he admitted. I want to know who you are when no one's watching. I want to see how your mind works when you're not busy smoothing over your father's edges. And I want to know if the way I feel starting to happen in here, he tapped his chest lightly, can become something real in a month, or if I'm just swept up by the drama of it all. She watched him steadily, scales flickering in subtle shifts that his translator couldn't label. Humans speak of falling in love, she said. A strange phrase. It suggests losing balance, losing control. Sound about right, Tyler said. Terrifying and kind of wonderful at the same time. We have no single word for that in Zenturi, she said. We speak of resonance, of alignment, of shared frequencies, but not of falling. Perhaps it is why we build such rigid expectations. We fear imbalance. She hesitated, then added, May I show you something? Always, he said. She turned slightly toward him and raised a hand. You asked once how Zenturi show intimacy, she said. We do not kiss as humans do. We share our bioelectric patterns. For a moment, two fields become one pattern. She placed her palm lightly against his chest, directly over his heart. A gentle vibration, too soft to be physical, hummed through him. It was like his nerves recognized something they'd never felt before, but instantly understood. Tyler covered her hand with his own. The vibration strengthened, and for a moment, his breath caught as his perception seemed to widen. His own heartbeat, the faint hum of the crystals, even the distant pulse of the palace's main resonance field, all of it overlapped with the rhythmic pattern coming from Atsura's touch. That's incredible, he said quietly. We do not share resonance lightly, she said. For most, it is done only with chosen partners. He swallowed. So this is kind of a big deal. For me, yes, she said simply. He shifted closer, heart pounding for entirely biological and entirely emotional reasons, and leaned forward to gently press his lips to the smooth scales of her cheek. She'd asked about human affection gestures days ago, curious. Now, he gave her the answer without overthinking it. Her scales rippled with a stunning cascade of color, rose gold and teal and copper flowing together in a way that made the surrounding crystals respond with faint echoes. That felt very pleasant, she said, sounding faintly dazed. Different from resonance, but complementary. Complementary, he echoed. So I passed the alien kissing test? Her laugh chimed, and the rose gold deepened. You did not fail. The next weeks blurred into a rhythm of work and something very much like dating. If dating involved imperial politics, military technology, and the constant low-level awareness that your relationship might redefine human Zenturi relations. During the days, Tyler worked with Kral and his team, scaling his harmonic buffer system to other ships in the fleet. The Zenturi engineers, initially wary, began to respect his methods. They argued, debated, and challenged him. But it was the kind of challenge he enjoyed, professionals pushing each other toward better solutions. Atsura attended strategy briefings, cultural councils, and diplomatic meetings, but she always made time to meet Tyler afterward. Sometimes they toured sections of the palace off-limits to ordinary courtiers. Sometimes they explored the capital, walking among markets where non-royal Zenturi inspected wares under glowing lanterns. Sometimes they stayed in the gardens, trading stories and questions until the moons dipped low. Tyler learned that her unusual body shape and scales were the result of a rare genetic variation that frightened traditionalists. "When I was born," she told him once as they walked through a nature preserve outside the city, "royal healers suggested corrective treatment. They said my form could be sculpted to match expectations." "And?" he asked, already suspecting the answer. "My mother refused," Otsera said. "She believed difference strengthened our line. She argued that a royal house should reflect the full possibility of our species, not just its narrowest ideals." "Your mother sounds like someone I would have liked," Tyler said. "She died when I was still young," Otsera replied. "Sometimes I think my father resents her decision every time he looks at me, not because I am unworthy, but because my existence reminds him of a choice he did not make." "He's wrong," Tyler said. "About you. About what strength looks like. You're not a defect. You're proof that Zenturi can be more than one thing at once." Her scales warmed in that way that meant his words hit somewhere deep. "As a human, you see me through different eyes," she said. "Perhaps it is why all of this feels both frightening and hopeful." On another evening, they sat in a small alcove overlooking the city lights. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked. "I miss familiarity," he said. "The way I knew how to be invisible on Meridian. The way no one expected me to make decisions that could change diplomatic history. But I want to go back to that life." He thought about the hum of the palace, the way the engineers now turned to him without resentment, the way Atsura's presence had become the anchor point in his days. "I'm not sure I do anymore," he admitted. "Whatever this is, it feels bigger than anything I had before. Not just the politics. Us." Her scales shimmered with that deep rose gold that now meant something he didn't need a translator for. "Among Zenturi royals," she said, "desire and duty rarely align. We are expected to choose the Imperium even when it costs us ourselves. With you for the first time, I do not feel those paths pulling in opposite directions." He reached over and laced his fingers with hers. Her hand tightened around his in a way that was both alien and very, very human. As the end of the courtship month approached, rumors grew louder in the palace corridors. Conservative nobles whispered about the impropriety of a human marrying into the imperial line. Others, more pragmatic, speculated about what such a union could mean for technological exchange and political leverage. 3 days before the deadline, Emperor ZTH summoned Tyler for a private audience. The throne room was smaller this time, more intimate, with only a handful of advisors present. "Human Tyler," the Emperor said as Tyler bowed. "You have brought stability to the Invictus and improved the fleet. Your month with my daughter is nearly complete. A decision approaches." "I understand, Your Majesty," Tyler said. "I will be plain," the Emperor continued. "This union would serve a strategic purpose. It would tie your United Earth Alliance to the Imperium and accelerate the sharing of valuable technologies. It would also provoke resistance from those who view humans as upstart primitives." "I'm aware of the stakes, sir," Tyler said. "Yet you persist," ZTH said, studying him. "Why?" Tyler took a breath. He could dance around it, couch everything in diplomatic language, but that wasn't who he was. "Because I care about Otsera," he said simply. "Not as a symbol, not as leverage, but as a person. I have seen how she thinks, how she hides her pain, how she carries responsibilities she didn't choose. I've learned how she laughs, how her scales light up when she's curious, how she looks at the stars as if she's already mapping pathways between them." He met the Emperor's four-eyed gaze without flinching. "In human terms," Tyler added quietly, "I'm falling in love with her." The chamber went very, very still. The Emperor's scales shifted through several patterns too fast for Tyler to interpret. "And what of her unconventional form?" ZTH asked at last. "You truly feel no revulsion? No shame?" Tyler's jaw tightened. "In my culture, body size and shape are not measures of worth," he said. "We still struggle with prejudice. but many of us are learning better. Atsera is beautiful, full stop. Her curves, her colors, her presence. They're part of who she is, and I wouldn't change a thing. Silence stretched, broken only by the faint hum of the palace crystal. Interesting, Empress Th said finally. You may go. We will speak again when the month concludes. Tyler left with his heart pounding and his mind racing. He found Atsera waiting for him in the crystal gardens, as if she'd known exactly where he would go after facing her father. He summoned you, she said. Yeah, Tyler said, sitting beside her on their usual bench. Wanted to know why I'm still here, why I'd consider tying myself to this place and you. And what did you say? She asked, eyes searching his face. The truth, he said, that I care for you, that I'm pretty sure I'm falling in love with you, and that the politics are second to that. Her scales flared with the brightest rose gold he'd seen yet, flooding down her arms and crest. Falling, she repeated softly. You used the word. I did, he said, because that's what it feels like. She looked down at their hands, then back up at him. Among Zenturi, we rarely speak of what we want, she said quietly. We speak of duty, service, stability. But if I am to learn from human customs. She shifted closer, the warmth of her presence soaking into him. Then I will say this clearly, she continued. I want to be with you, Tyler Grant. Not because my father offered me as a joke, not because our union would benefit the Imperium, but because you see me as more than my shape, more than my lineage. You see me. His breath caught. Then at the end of this month, he said softly, I'll stand before your father and tell him I choose you. If you still want that. I will tell him the same, she said. Let us see if an empire can survive two people choosing each other for themselves. The final day of the courtship month dawned with palpable tension. The palace thrummed at a slightly higher pitch, its living crystal carrying the emotional static of thousands of minds speculating, worrying, scheming. Tyler dressed in his best version of formal attire, the medal of imperial service pinned neatly to his chest. Atsera arrived at his door wearing a ceremonial ensemble that framed her full form intentionally, not hiding it, but emphasizing the flowing lines of her body and the gleam of her teal and copper scales. You look, he started, then shook his head. I'm going to run out of words for beautiful around you. You have enough, she said, rose gold flickering in her scales. Let us see if we have enough courage as well. The main throne chamber was filled when they arrived. Nobles, military leaders, advisors, and members of the Galactic Diplomatic Corps all watched as they walked the central path together. Whispers flowed like current. Some scales gleamed with curiosity, others with discomfort or outright anger. Emperor ZDH sat upon his throne, scales shimmering with cool authority. When Tyler and Atsera reached their designated point, they bowed in practiced unison. 1 month ago, the Emperor said, his voice carrying easily across the hall, I offered human Tyler a reward for his service. That reward included the possibility of a union with my daughter, Princess Atsera, pending a courtship period in accordance with human custom. He let the words sink in. The whispers grew louder. That period ends today, he continued. A decision must be rendered. He turned to Tyler first. Human Tyler Grant, he said, you have walked our halls, worked alongside our engineers, and spent this month in the company of my daughter. Do you accept the proposed union? Tyler's heart pounded, but his voice was steady. Your Majesty, he said, it would be my honor to accept Princess Atsera as my wife, if she still wishes it. A wave of reaction swept the hall. ZTH's gaze shifted to his daughter. Princess Atsera, he said, you have shared this month with a human, a mechanic from a young, spacefaring species. Do you accept this union? Atsera's scales were a formal royal teal, but that deep rose gold glowed warmly underneath, visible to anyone who cared to really look. Father, she said, I could choose Tyler Grant as my husband, if he will have me. The Emperor studied them both for a long moment. It seems your answers align, he said. But before I confirm what some see as a radical step, there is a matter of security that must be addressed. He raised a hand. Admiral Zentrak, he called. Step forward. The gunmetal-scaled admiral approached, posture rigid. You have expressed concerns regarding this union, the Emperor said. Voice them, so they may be answered, or disproven. Zentrak turned to face the assembled court. Your Majesty, honored members of the Imperium, he said. I speak not from prejudice, but from duty. This human has been granted unprecedented access to our most advanced warships. He has altered the Invictus and now guides integration doctrine across the fleet. If he joins the royal line, he will gain even greater access to our secrets. He turned his gaze directly on Tyler. How can we be certain, Zentrak continued, that these modifications do not contain hidden vulnerabilities? What prevents this human mechanic from one day serving Earth's interests at the Imperium's expense? The murmurs this time carried sharp edges. Tyler felt their weight, but didn't flinch. It was a fair, tactical concern. The Emperor looked at him. Human Tyler, how do you answer? Tyler stepped forward slightly. Admiral Zentrak's question is strategic and valid, he said. If I were in his position, I might ask the same thing. But everything I have done on the Invictus and other ships has been fully documented. Zenturi engineers reviewed every line of code, every resonance map, every buffer installation. Nothing I implemented is hidden. If there were a weakness, your people would already have seen it. Zentrak's scales darkened. Your primary allegiance is still to the United Earth Alliance, he said. Your species, your home. Divided loyalties breed betrayal. My first allegiance is to truth, Tyler answered, and to the people I care about. I came here as a human technician, but if I'm Marriott Sarah, I will also be a citizen of the Imperium. My loyalty would not be split, it would be layered. I would work for the good of both. A divided loyalty is no loyalty at all, Zentrak snapped. I propose a test that would prove where his loyalty lies. The Emperor's scales rippled with interest. Speak. Let the human renounce his Earth citizenship, Zentrak said. Let him grant the Imperium exclusive rights to his harmonic buffer technology. And let him submit to a neural imprint, as all who serve sensitive Imperial posts must. Such an imprint will make it biologically impossible for him to betray critical secrets. A hush settled like dust. Tyler knew about Zenturi neural imprints. They were serious. Not mind control, exactly, but a hard biological lock that turns certain types of betrayal into physical impossibility. A neural imprint, the Emperor said slowly. This would certainly resolve any doubts. His gaze fell on Tyler. Will you submit to this test? Tyler glanced at Atsera. Her scales had darkened with deep concern, hints of rose gold flashing in distressed patterns. May I speak with the princess privately, Your Majesty? Tyler asked. A brief moment, ZTH said, curious. Do not flee. There is nowhere you can go that my ships cannot reach. Tyler and Atsera stepped through a side arch into a small antechamber. The sounds of the court muffled but present. A neural imprint would bind your will in all matters touching Imperial security, Atsera said immediately. In some ways, it is worse than chains. You would still be yourself in many areas, but in that one domain, you would not be able to choose, even if your conscience demanded it. So, if I saw something the Imperium did that I believed was wrong, Tyler said slowly, I physically couldn't act against it. Yes, she said. And if conflict ever arose between Earth and the Imperium, the imprint would compel you toward my people's interests, even if it meant harm to your own. He ran a hand through his hair. If I refuse, Zentrak uses it as proof I can't be trusted, Tyler said. If I agree, I lose the ability to be fully me. There is another path, Atsera said, but it is risky. You would have to challenge Zentrak through old law. He blinked. There's an old law for this. The challenge of honor, she said. When one's integrity is publicly questioned, they may demand the accuser accept a test based on skill rather than enforced obedience. If you propose such a test and win, their accusations lose standing. Like a trial by combat. Tyler asked. Not necessarily physical, she said quickly. The form of the challenge is based on the accused primary skill. In your case, engineering. Tyler's mind clicked into gear. So, I could propose a technical challenge that proves my intentions? Yes. But if the challenge fails, Zintrak's argument gains even more weight. He considered for a long heartbeat, then nodded. I'd rather be judged by what I build than by how tightly someone can lock my brain. They returned to the main chamber. Tyler stepped forward before ZTH could speak. Your Majesty, he said, voice clear, I decline the neural imprint. Not out of fear of commitment, but because it would prevent me from acting according to conscience should you ever require voices that speak uncomfortable truths. Instead, I invoke the challenge of honor. The hall reacted in a wave of startled colors. The Emperor's crest rose with unmistakable interest. An old law, he mused, rarely used in recent cycles, but still binding. He looked to Zintrak. Admiral, will you accept? Trapped by protocol, Zintrak's scales flickered with irritation. I must, he said. What challenge does the human propose? Tyler faced both of them. I will design and implement a defensive oversight system for the Invictus, he said. A safeguard that monitors critical systems for unauthorized modifications and prevents sabotage, including for me. Zenturi engineers will examine every line and attempt to break it. If they confirm that even I cannot bypass the protections without detection, it will prove I'm willing to constrain my own power for your safety. That my engineering serves the Imperium, not secretly undermines it. The Emperor leaned back, considering. A clever challenge, he said at last. You propose to prove your integrity by building a system that limits your own ability to betray us. Exactly, Tyler said. Admiral, ZTH asked. Zintrak looked like he'd swallowed something sour. I accept, he said stiffly. Let the human bind himself with his own tools. The next 3 days were some of the most intense of Tyler's life. He practically lived in Invictus Engineering Core, sketching, simulating, and refining designs. The security system he envisioned would sit above the buffer networks like a guardian, monitoring energy signatures, structural changes, and code edits. Any alteration of critical systems would trigger a cascading lockdown and alert. He showed every step of his work to Crawl and the engineering core. No hidden pathways, no backdoor controls. Anytime his old instinct to leave himself a secret access route twitched, he shut it down. If he was going to prove his character, he had to go all in. Otsera visited when she could, bringing food, sharing short moments of quiet resonance, and reminding him he wasn't just building a system. He was building a future. When the prototype was ready, they ran simulations. Kral attacked it with every trick Zenturi doctrine knew. They invited Drayan and Valkan consultants to poke at it with their own hacking philosophies. Tyler himself spent a full night trying to find a loophole, forcing himself to think like someone who wanted to betray rather than protect. By the end, the system remained intact, not unbreakable. Nothing was but so layered and responsive that any attempt to subvert it would be obvious well before damage was done. Back in the throne chamber, Tyler presented the results. Kral stepped forward as well, scales gleaming with professional respect. Your Majesty, Kral said, we have examined the human security construct. It is robust, adaptive, and transparent. There are no hidden vulnerabilities favoring the designer. In several simulations, it even stopped hypothetical exploits that our own security teams missed. Zintrak's jaw clenched, his scales flushing a grudging blue. He couldn't refute the data. The human has met the challenge of honor, the Emperor said, voice carrying through the crystal-tuned chamber. By skill, not compulsion, he has proven his intent to guard the Imperium's strength, even from himself. He rose from the throne. Let all present bear witness, ZTH proclaimed. Tyler Grant of Earth has earned the right to stand beside my daughter, not as a pet, not as a joke, but as a partner. The union will proceed. Atsera's hand found Tyler's. Her scales glowed with a rose gold so rich it practically lit the air between them. The wedding, held weeks later, blended Zenturi's ceremony with human vows. They exchanged resonance and rings, crystal and metal, promises of shared frequencies and shared futures. Representatives from the United Earth Alliance attended, some stiff-backed and unsure. Others openly moved by the sight of a human and a so-called fat alien princess, choosing each other in front of two civilizations. Years passed. The titles changed. Princess became emissary, then formal liaison between the Imperium and the expanding Galactic Cooperative. Tyler became less the human mechanic and more the architect of integration, a bridge builder in every sense. Their love story between human and alien, mechanic and royal, body-shamed daughter and man who saw her as a miracle, quietly rewrote what many species thought possible. On the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Harmony, they stood side by side, watching ships from 12 species gather for the first truly cooperative summit. Who would have guessed, Tyler said, arm around Atzera's waist, that an emperor sending his fat daughter as a joke would lead to all this? Atzera's scales shimmered with warm rose gold, her laughter soft. My father still insists it was his plan, she said. He claims he foresaw every outcome. Of course he does, Tyler snorted. Never let the truth get in the way of imperial ego. Tiny footsteps pattered across the deck. Their 3-year-old daughter bounded up, her hybrid form a perfect blend of both worlds. Smooth skin with patches of delicate scales along her cheeks and arms, soft crest spines beginning to grow, and bright golden eyes full of mischief. More ships, Mama. More worlds, she said, pointing at the stars beyond the glass. More worlds to visit, Tyler said, scooping her up. And they won't look at you like you don't belong. Not anymore. Atzera reached out, touching both of them at once, their bioelectric fields merging into a resonance that hummed with connection. The galaxy is learning, she said, to see strength in difference, to hear music in imperfect harmonies. That's what happens, Tyler said, when a mechanic gets his hands on the universe's wiring. And when a so-called flawed princess refuses to let anyone rewrite her shape, she added. As the summit began, as new treaties and shared technologies started rewriting the rules of galactic power, the story that started everything, an emperor's reckless joke, a human stubborn heart, a princess's quiet courage, settled into the background. But somewhere in the streams of data, in the crystal halls and buzzing engines, their resonance lingered like a quiet, unbreakable chord. If you stayed with this story all the way to the end, don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you like? What would you change? What kind of human, alien love story or space opera adventure you want to hear next? Your feedback really helps the channel grow. Hit that like button, subscribe if you enjoy sci-fi romance with heart, and check out the next story on your screen. I think you'll love where we're going next. Big hug, and see you in the next one.